Blog Talk Radio.
In a fantasy football world, taken over by robots, where spreadsheets rule the day and the content is dull, a ragtag band of fantasy football experts comes to you every Wednesday night on Blog Talk Radio. This is the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show. And welcome back. 2012 preseason starting up. The fantasy football experts are here at Kick-Ass Fantasy Football. We are live on Blog Talk Radio with fantasy phenom J.B. Barker and Dr. Don McCardell. J.B., how are you doing? How was your year since the Super Bowl?
Oh, man, I am great. Thanks for I'm just happy to be back for another year. Get to talk fantasy, get to talk football. Yeah, it's been great since the Super Bowl. But I'm just so happy that we have preseason games right around the corner, and I can't wait to start watching.
Fantastic. And Dr. Don, tell us about your year since football ended.
I'm ready to go. My fantasy baseball team went down the tubes in June, so I've been waiting for some football ever since then.
Fantastic. You got the chance to focus 100% on football now, which is how we like it.
Yeah, that's a fact.
You must have been Phillies heavy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. They're
and the Boo Birds are out.
Yeah, that's
it is Philadelphia.
Wow.
So, guys, we have a great show lined up. We've got a discussion of some drafting strategies. We're going to take a look at some high-impact rookies that will make a difference on your fantasy squads in 2012. And we will be talking about various teams around the league and what they can look forward to. And we might get into some predictions late in the show if we get around to it and if we can get through all this news and all this work. So I do want to make a note right now at the top of the show that Kick-Ass Fantasy Football, our entire crew, will be at the Fantasy Football Fest in Atlantic City, August 18th and 19th. This is a big opportunity to come out, meet all of your NFL heroes, and get their autographs, talk to the various experts in fantasy football, maybe even participate in a draft yourself. Should be a lot of fun. And you know what, guys? This is the season for drafting. So let's talk a little bit about draft strategies. JB, when you go into a regular draft, a snake draft, what are you thinking? How are you going about it when you go in?
Well, there's basically two types of leagues that I like to think, as far as basic scoring systems. And that would be, leagues that allow 6 points for quarterbacks and leagues that allow 4 points for quarterback touchdowns. And depending what your league format is, that's the only way that I would personally go out and draft a quarterback in the first round is if you were getting a full 6 points for your quarterback touchdowns. Otherwise, I need that good running back. That's where I'm generally thinking 99% of the time. Round one, I want to build my team around the guy that's going to be toting the ball, a lot, and somebody that I can count on to score for me every single week. Outside of maybe a Tom Brady and a Drew Brees, I can see them going maybe, mid to late first round in a 4-point system. But the other side of that is if you are in a league where they allow 6 points for quarterback touchdowns, you're crazy not to go after one of those top elite. A top 5 quarterback is almost a must if you can get your hands on one in the first round.
Okay, so RB heavy to start, unless 6 points per touchdown, JB?
That's basically my first round strategy. Yep.
Okay, you are old school. How about you, Don? What are you thinking when you walk into the room on draft day?
I'm gonna have to agree with him from the running back point of view, especially if there's a PPR league, points per reception. I tend to lead towards a running back. Like if you can get a Ray Rice right off the bat who catches the ball a lot, or somebody like that. Also, most people don't lean towards this, but I also try to go after the tight ends in the league. There's a big disparity between like a guy like Antonio Gates. There's only a few elite guys like that. I tend to go after him like third, fourth round. Not a lot of people are thinking tight end right then. So, especially the past 2 years, like a guy like Antonio Gates, he's been hurt, but if he played, but in every year, past 2 years, he's been on pace to break almost every tight end record. So, just nothing worse than ended up with a position that is really weak, because you forget about it. So, like I said, I go for a running back right off the bat. I tend not to worry about quarterback too much because I think there's still value in the later rounds for, not last year. He didn't do anything but like a Josh Freeman or, even last year he could have got away with Andy Dalton at the helm last year. So I think there's still value in the later rounds for a quarterback. I think you can kind of let that go. And
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Okay, well, I got to tell you, on Sunday's show, we actually debated whether or not it'd be smart to take tight end if you're the 12th pick in a snake draft, considering there's two that are far and away better than the rest of the league. That it would be an insanity play, but you really could break the rest of your league by doing that. So,
sure.
We were having fun with it.
Yeah. And see, I used to come from the very old school mentality of I would always start off running back, my first two picks.
Yep.
In an evolving world where, of football where they're throwing the ball much more than the old, 50% run guaranteed, that doesn't happen in a lot of running back by committees out there. So there's very few true number one running backs out there. So I kind of like in the first 3 or 4 picks, generally what I try to do is I want to fill in a stud at every position. If I can grab a running back, then maybe grab a quarterback or a wide receiver, and then the next pick, pick up, but I want 3 guys that I know I can count on every week, that are going out there and are going to produce at every position for me. And so my way of thinking's changed over like the past 2 years from that staunch running back routine, but it seems to be effective. I came in, I think dead last in the league last year. So, hey, who knows?
I agree. We don't divulge last place finishes on the show. Come on.
And that was one of 6 leagues. So, but, we all take our lumps.
Yeah, well, that's last year you could have been taking Jamal Charles in the first round and or Chris Johnson, for that matter.
Yeah.
And had your league go right down the tube. So it is high risk, high reward. But, the old school running back strategy is still out there and still, really almost predominant approach. Now, with 5 high-end, we got a little shark comment there, shark sound effect. With 5 high-end running backs, and you get to that 6th spot, and you start getting into guys who are in a committee, is that where you would start to look at, with Aaron Rodgers, or Calvin Johnson, or are you gonna stick by your guns and, maybe reach for a Trent Richardson there?
I don't know if you do that. I mean, I think you try to go for, I think you guys try to go somewhere else. I think you do a quarterback or something like that because after Arian Foster, Ray Rice, and LaShawn McCoy, there's a couple other guys, Jones Drew, but after that, you might as well wait till the later rounds because how many people drafted Roy Helu last year? How many people drafted Reggie Bush last year? There's a bunch of guys that not for the whole season, but for a couple of games could get you by on a bye week. For that last six games of the season, Reggie Bush was on fire. How many people drafted Beanie Wells in the top 2, top 3 rounds last year? These are guys you can get later in the round and are still going to get you, those 10 touchdowns. I mean, Beanie Wells had a great year last year. Roy Helu came out of nowhere, guys like that. But and then if you do draft that running back high, you can end up with a Peyton Hillis who was a complete plus last year. I just don't think running backs as deep as it has been, back in there, 6-7 years ago. There was you had to go running backs in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the league's evolved, and, fantasy, we're trying to evolve right along with it. And that's the value that we bring you at Kick-Ass Fantasy Football. Guys, we're going to take our first break of the night, and we will be back in just a minute or two. Stay tuned. You're listening to Kick-Ass Fantasy Football with Dr. Don and JB, the Fantasy
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and KickassFantasyFootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from FantasyJudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95, and we'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with KickassFantasyFootball.com. Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
And me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at KickassFantasyFootball.com.
Welcome back. FantasyJudgment.com is the premier dispute resolution service for all fantasy sport leagues. Led by attorney Michael A. Stein, the Supreme Court of Fantasy Judgment will resolve any and all issues or conflicts that arise in your fantasy leagues. This includes trades, disputes, collusion, abuse of power by league commissioners, lineup, roster errors, draft issues, and interpretation of league rules. If you have a problem, turn to attorney Michael A. Stein and the experts at FantasyJudgment.com. You need a higher power, you need an objective voice. Michael A. Stein is there for you. Okay, welcome back to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show here on Blog Talk Radio. We are with our experts, Dr. Don and JB. JB, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the high-profile rookies we've got in the NFL this year?
Well, people are still, the whole buzz around Andrew Luck and RG3 and, the guys that went 1 and 2. But the guy that's really got me interested right now is Trent Richardson down in Cleveland. I think that he could actually, it's at this level, it's very hard for rookies to come in and actually make an impact, let alone in the fantasy world, but just in the world of football. They normally need to catch up to the speed of the game. Some guys bloom late in the year. Some guys it takes 2 or 3 years before they have any real relevancy. Everything that I've read, anything that I've seen, and any research that I've done, this kid could actually come out and maybe even have a starting role and be pretty productive. They've got a young squad of receivers who are still coming into their own, and they're going to need, receivers. They always talk about the third-year receiver, and, that's when the light switch kind of goes on for these guys. They may rely pretty heavily on this kid in his rookie season, and he may be able to put up some big numbers. He may be getting a lot of, just a lot of touches. And as we all know, the more time you give these guys the ball, sooner or later something good's going to happen. So he's really high on my radar right now.
He's definitely a high impact rookie running back to watch. How about quarterbacks, Dr. Don? Any rookies worth drafting this year?
Yeah, everybody's saying RG3. I kind of like I'm kind of like an Andrew Luck fan. I like Robert Griffin. I just don't like the situation he's in Washington. The front office has proved time and time again they don't know what they're really don't know what they're doing there. But I like Andrew Luck. I know that Colts team looked terrible last year. I don't know whether that had anything to do with them trying to get the first overall pick. But surprisingly, look at that surprise. Reggie Wayne re-signing with them. He's gonna have some weapons around. They got, unlike Washington, they have a good front office. I think they're going to put the pieces around him so he turns into a good quarterback and not the next Brian Thief.
Okay, so Luck and Griffin really the only rookies on your radar this year?
Second round.
I don't think Tannehill is got too much of a chance.
No. Yeah,
Okay. How about at the wide receiver position? We had Julio Jones, jump out of the box last year and really make an impact in fantasy circles? Anybody look like they're going to leap out at wide receiver in 2012?
I like Stephen Hill for the Jets. I know he went to Georgia Tech and he only had about 11 catches last year, but Georgia Tech runs that option, to run the veer. But I like, he's kind of in that Demaryius Thomas mold. Demaryius Thomas went to Georgia Tech. Stephen Hill, 6'4", 215, big body. Of course, second round pick for the Jets. All basically based around all potential there. But like I said, he's in that Demaryius Thomas mold, big body, big kid, fast as you know what. So I like him. Maybe he could be surprised. I mean, depending on who throws the ball to him, and there in New York, that's a whole, that's a 2-hour show in itself because of that quarterback situation in the Jets. But I kind of like Stephen Hill this year with the Jets sleeper pick.
There's a couple that I like, Professor. I'm really big on Justin Blackmon, and I really like Kendall Wright. Interesting with Kendall Wright, I think another guy that could just kind of move in and take a starting role. I mean, Kenny Britt, he's been a disaster off the field. He's been arrested. He's got some health issues, and I really don't know yet what his actual status is and if he's going to be ready to suit up for Week 1 or not. But with all the controversy surrounding that guy, this is a place for this young kid, Kendall Wright. He can come in, and I think he actually can make an impact down there. And they're going to need, to spread the ball around a little bit. Like last year, you saw Chris Johnson. He was struggling, and they didn't get off to the start that he didn't get off to the start he wanted to after he came back from his holdout. And I think that he can make an immediate impact. And then as far as Justin Blackmon, this kid, he's big, he's fast, and I really think the only thing that can stop him may be Blaine Gabbert. So, and I don't know, and we're still yet to see what he's going to be able to do, and if he's reached any of his full potential yet. But there are two wide receivers that are definitely on my radar. Now, I'm not saying I would jump out and take them in the first 2 or 3 rounds, but they're definitely guys that I would give a look to and take in the middle to late rounds.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of my personal strategy is finding those lottery tickets and cashing them in. So this is great info. Love to hear about rookies, and the commish threw Brian Quick out there on Sunday. Went and did a little bit of homework on him, and I really liked the idea of a rookie coming in with that new coaching squad in St. Louis. So he's another guy that could make a difference out there.
No.
On NFL teams and fantasy teams.
And then I know it's really not a wide receiver, but from the same from the guys who like to catch the ball out there, there's a tight end, Kobe Fleener, who went to the Colts, and I think he has a little bit of past history with Andrew Luck. I think they used to play together at one point, so there's probably going to be a little bit of chemistry there. Luck will be happy to know he's a good pass defense rush. I can say this tight end. So he's good at blocking. I think that's going to keep the quarterback a little more calm, and then he knows he has that safety outlet too if he needs to get rid of the ball. It's somebody that he's thrown the ball to before and he can trust.
Okay, well, I like that. That the rookies always like to find that tight end on the outlet pass, so that definitely gives him a lot of value. That's a great pick, Kobe Fleener. And there's a guy that most people, unless you've been following the draft in the offseason, Kobe Fleener's a new name for you. So we're giving you some quality info from Dr. Don. So how about on the defensive side of the ball?
Oh, that's funny. Okay, what was it? The defensive side of the ball?
I like that kid, Michael Kendricks, the Eagles drafted. I mean, it's bad. They made that move with D'Amico Ryans, and then they draft Michael Kendricks out of California. They don't really know where he's going to play. Going to play on the outside somewhere, but I think he ran his 40 in 4.4, which is awesome for a middle linebacker. And kind of played out of position in California, but did a lot of blitzing, which the Eagles, that's one thing their linebackers. None of them were really good at last year, and they weren't really good at anything last year. But they weren't, they didn't have really any good blitzers last year. This guy can, he's fast. That's what his job in college was, to get after the quarterback. And, if he can figure out pass defense a little bit, this guy could be something special for the Eagles.
Okay, good stuff. So, okay, anybody else out there that has a chance to turn somebody's offense or defense around in 2012, gentlemen?
Not to keep talking about the Eagles here, but another guy that looks real good. I got some insider information. Somebody, relative of mine that does a lot of news coverage for Philly. He's been up at training camp since the Eagles have been there. He says Fletcher Cox looks really good. Nice kid. Got to talk to him, and good kid, big kid. And he's going to hopefully look good this year. Looks good this year. Plus with Colin Jenkins hurting a little bit this year, Fletcher Cox got that shot in the start.
Yeah, it is a remade defense for the Philadelphia Eagles this year. They are our local team for much of the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football family. So they get a lot of coverage here. I personally like Bryce Brown as a future NFLer, but I don't think he's going to do much this year, rounding out the rookies for the Eagles.
Well, a guy that I'd like to talk of to get away from the Eagles, how about Courtney Upshaw for the Baltimore Ravens? I mean, he was drafted to a team that is, infamous for their defense and defensive strategies, and, I think he's a kid with a lot of talent as an outside linebacker. He's going to be able to learn from a guy like, Ray, and, I mean, his, just to be given that opportunity, could you imagine being a linebacker and then you get drafted by a team like the Steelers or like the Ravens, and, the history that the team brings and the veterans around you, that you can just learn so much and just learn the game from a whole other perspective. Coaches can teach from a coaching perspective. To learn from a guy like Ray Lewis I don't think you can put a price tag on that. And with the talent that they say this kid has, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and working alongside of Ray, I think, he could be interesting to watch this year.
All right. Excellent. Hey, guys, you know what time it is? It's time for our next break. When we come back in just 2 minutes, we will be going into some of the team-by-team analysis and, talking to our experts about what to expect for the rest of the preseason here in the NFL. You're listening to Kick-Ass Fantasy Football. Find us on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
and me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com. Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and kickassfantasyfootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95. We'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com.
And welcome back to Kick-Ass Fantasy Football on Blog Talk Radio. We're going to talk about Fantasy Football Evolution, the first ever worldwide fantasy football competition. Are you good at fantasy football? Are you used to winning your fantasy league? Well, now put your fantasy skills and savvy to the ultimate test, playing against the rest of the world with Fantasy Football Evolution. Draft your team, manage it through a 10-week regular season, then go through a 1-week elimination round and a 64-team tournament, winner of which will get $25,000. Visit them at Next Gen FFE for more details. Fantasy Football Evolution. Compete against the world.
Because I watched that movie, Patrick Wedding.
We got a little bit of background noise there, Professor.
Yeah, we do, and that's not at my end. That might be on the Blog Talk side, but
I think it's our illustrious leader.
Is it our illustrious leader listening in?
I would have to say yes.
Okay, well, guys, we're gonna get into a few team spotlights. Is that his intro music? Commish, is that you on the line?
As a matter of fact,
getting played in.
I had to come on the show. I was watching the Olympics. I'm getting just getting my swim gear off. I was watching Michael Phelps and getting a little anxious because football season is about to start. And I'm excited that we're back on the air, guys. Great to be here.
Awesome.
I thought we were listening to your movie selection for this evening. It was kind of interesting. You buzzed in a little early. That's cool. Nice to have you here.
We got a lot going on here at Kick-Ass Fantasy Football headquarters, and I'm just glad I'm glad football's back, man. It's been a long off season, so this is just really exciting stuff.
Well, Commish, while we got you on the phone, I'm going to give you the first chance at this question before I get over to Dr. Don and JB. What fantasy player do you see making a fantasy comeback in 2012? Somebody who maybe underperformed last year and has the opportunity to turn it around.
I'll tell you what, the guy that I have in mind is Chris Johnson.
Yeah, that's who I got too.
big underperformer last year. Let a lot of fantasy owners down. But I think that this year, looks like Jake Lockard is the favorite to be the starter. I think he's got his head on straight. He's headed into camp with the right attitude, with a mini camp. I think he'll be in football shape and ready to go to put the burners on it and put top 20 fantasy numbers up, and a guy you can pick up late in your draft.
I agree with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
How about Sean Green, Commish? Is he going to bounce back from last year?
You know what, Sean Green. I've had a big man crush on him last year, but with Tebow going to that team and seeing all the things already that they're asking him to do, I think it's really going to hurt Sean Green's ability to be anything more than a flex spot in that this year. So it's just something that I think you got to lay off this guy moving forward.
Okay. So it's the romance, the bromance is over for the Commish.
Yes. My new romance was a guy that my new bromance is with a guy who just got into a car accident. Matthews, running back for San Diego, he just got in a 2-car wreck. So looks like he'll be okay. But I think here's a guy in his third year, and I said this on our Sunday show, Steve, on ESPN Radio, that I think he's due to have a breakout year. I know his first couple of years he's missed some games due to injury, and I know that he's had some protection problems, but I think it's his year to shine. And with Vincent Jackson gone, I think that they're going to have a little bit more there's a lot more promise for him to have a big year running the ball for San Diego.
Okay, Commish. Well, thanks for stopping in on the. Well, I tell you what, you can stay and listen. Let's see what JB's got up his sleeve for the bounce back player of 2012. Anybody going to make a big
impact? Guy that I went really heavy on last year. I had him as my starting quarterback in 3 or 4 leagues, and he was a big disappointment to me, and that would be Josh Freeman. And with a man that our illustrious leader just so mentioned, in Vincent Jackson, who made his way down to Tampa Bay, and I think that that's a nice, big, strong, fast target for him to look at. And I really think he won't be on my roster after the disappointment I had from Josh Freeman. I probably will refuse to draft him this year, which makes him a go-getter for everybody listening to the show, because once I turn my back on the guy, he'll have a breakout season. He'll throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. But so he's the guy that I think can really make an impact and bounce back.
Hey, before we have Dr. Don going, if I may break in real quick, we have our first chat room question of the year on the Blog Talk Radio show, and I'm glad to see who it is. It's actually Yoga27. He's been a faithful listener with our show the last couple of years, so it's great to have him in our chat room. We thank you for that. He has a question for our experts here. He says, I have the 14th pick in a 14-team 1-point PPR redraft league. Would you take a running back or running back receiver? And it's a snake-style draft. And he gave an example, like, would you take a McFadden, Forte, and a Fitz are available? Would you take the 2 running backs, or sort of Fitz in the 3 with the first 2 picks?
Commish, ask him if he can take. Ask him if his team has a flex position.
Okay, I'll ask. Okay.
While Dr. Don gives his answer, I'm sorry.
I would say, well, before I give my top, downer from last year and upper, he's going to be good this year. If he's talking Forte and McFadden, you got to pick them 2 guys over Fitzpatrick. I mean, that sets up his draft real nice with McFadden and Forte, especially Michael Bush. He left Oakland this year. But for the two guys that I think had a little down year last year, but they're going to do good this year, I got to go with Brandon Marshall and Jay Cutler. Brandon Marshall gets new scenery. Actually gets a person that can throw the ball, which wasn't happening in Miami. I think he's going to have a breakout year this year, and another year in a Chicago system. I think Cutler. I'm looking to him this year as a fantasy quarterback. I know he's a little bit interception prone sometimes, but he looked better last year before he got hurt. But I think Cutler and Marshall could be huge this year, from a fantasy point and just an actual football standpoint.
Okay. Commish, did we get an answer from Yogun?
No answer from Yogun. I think he just went to make dinner for the wife. So I can email him back though. So
no, that's fine. I was going to push my my tight end strategy at the bottom of the first half.
Well, I'd like to weigh in on that. I'd like to weigh in on that. I mean, actually, I love the last pick in the round like that with the double pick because, you know what, it kind of gives you a good overview to see what everybody else is going. If there's a big run on running backs early, you may want to gobble up too. If it's been spread around a little bit, some guys are taking the Larry Fitzgeralds and the Calvin Johnsons and and then the top running backs and a couple of quarterbacks are mixed in. You may want to go for a more rounded approach. But being at that 14th pick, it's beautiful because you get to see what everybody else's strategy is.
That's true.
So, if 10 running backs go off the board, you better grab 2 running backs right there. But so it's really a luxury position to have, and I think it all depends on how everybody else is drafting.
Well, what you get into though is instead of you're making your strategy and making other people react, you're playing a counterpuncher's role in there, and you're having to almost react to them. So, it's got its positives and its negatives, but going tight end there, you're basically just giving almost a double middle finger to the rest of your league, saying, okay, none of you are going to play with any tight ends this year.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I guess you're right. If there's a flex position that you can start running back or wide receiver or tight end, I mean that could be devastating because you could definitely go after 2 guys who are going to put up wide receiver type stats, like top 10 wide receiver type stats. So
and that's what they're saying.
Jimmy Graham
Yep. Graham and Gronkowski, they're saying are going to be in that. Even as wide receivers, they'd be in the top 10, top 15.
Sure.
So you really could play a little game-breaking strategy there. I'm going to have to flesh that out in an article for the website. And you can visit us on the website at kickassfantasyfootball.com, where you'll have articles on waiver strategy and trade advice throughout the season, and all kinds of articles on running back strategy and tactics in the preseason. We are here to help you win the championship at kickassfantasyfootball.com. Dr. Don, we're gonna jump back to you now. Now that we've answered Yogan's question, your bounce back player for 2012.
Oh yeah, I had already said Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall. I'm telling you right now.
Jay guys. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a change of scenery for Marshall. I mean, let's face it, he was in Miami, and they didn't have a quarterback there the past couple of years, and Cutler finally gets a legit wide receiver. You know what I mean? And with Forte already in the backfield, I know and he just got his payday. I think the Bears' offense is going to look good next year or this year coming up. So,
getting rid of Mike Martz is certainly going to be a big change up in Chicago. Yeah. And you have to think that Martz's schemes left Cutler exposed for a lot of those sacks that he took. So, he's going to be happy to be upright in 2012, and certainly happy to have Brandon Marshall out there. Yeah.
Well, maybe they can finally lose that moniker. Chicago is where wide receivers go to die. I think somebody put that out there a couple of years ago. It kind of made some headlines, and but you're right. Under that system, it was tough for a wide receiver to shine.
Yeah, it's cold up there. It's not the Dome in St. Louis, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, fellas, I think we are due up for another commercial. You are listening to the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show on Blog Talk Radio. We will be back in 1 minute with Dr. Don and JB.
Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and KickassFantasyFootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from FantasyJudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95. We'll throw in a complimentary cruise for two to the Bahamas.
Cruise to a championship with KickassFantasyFootball.com. Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
and me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at KickassFantasyFootball.com.
Welcome back to our Blog Talk Radio Show with your experts, Dr. Don McCardell and the fantasy phenom, J.B. Barker. Gentlemen, this has been the fastest 40 minutes I have spent in the last 8 months. Let me tell you, I am enjoying talking fantasy football, hearing what you guys have to say. We are going to take a little tour through the league, talk about some teams that you guys want to focus on. And Dr. Don, why don't you break down the team of your choice. We'll give you first swing here.
Did we lose Dr. Don?
No, I'm right here.
We may have.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I tell you what, we'll give you a chance to punt to JB if you want to let JB go first.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
we know he's going to talk about the Steelers, though. So.
Absolutely. As a Steelers fan, to me, there's all sorts of exciting news going on around the Steelers, and I think a lot of it can have some fantasy impact as well. To start off, Big Ben announced a couple of days ago that he's had a torn rotator cuff since late last year, like last November or December, and he equated that to a lot of the problems that he had in the year, and a lot of the things a lot of the poor throws. Now, that's crazy to me. If they knew that he had a torn rotator cuff, first of all, I don't understand why they didn't take the time to address that during the off season and fix it. It's not, nowadays with the invasive surgery, it's not something that takes, the months and months and months it used to heal from that. They can go in orthoscopically and fix that up, pretty quickly these days. Now that the season's upon us, that's no longer an option. You just got to hope that, it holds up for the rest of the season. In other news, with the help that he's going to have on the line, which may actually help save his shoulder. They picked up two big offensive linemen, with the first two picks of their draft, and Mike Adams and David DeCastro. And I'm just hoping that these guys can keep him upright. I mean, over the past 5 years, Ben Roethlisberger's like the most sacked quarterback in the league. No wonder why this guy's got shoulder problems. So, I'm really hoping that, they can help fill those holes and keep him standing upright and let him do what he does best. I mean, you get him moving around, he's deadly accurate. He's got, his legs can save him in a lot of plays, and we all know that the strength that he's got, he can definitely throw the ball and make those plays. And then last but not least, with, the Isaac Redmond looking like he's going to be our starting running back, at least for the first few weeks, with Nweldy Moore backing him up, all while we're waiting for Mendenhall to get healthy. So, and just as a little side note there, that could really be a diamond in the rough if he's available, say, in your later, the later rounds. I'm talking like 7, 8, 9. If Isaac Redmond is still there and you need some extra help at running back if your early draft strategy didn't go so well, here's a guy that, could wind up being the starting running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers with a new offensive coordinator who says he wants to get back to basics and start pounding the ball again and playing some hard-nosed Steeler football. So
I'm going to jump in here, JB. Isaac
sure.
Redmond's ADP is the early 6th round. You taking him there?
If he's there, I have to take him there. Yes.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No, that's great. And like I said, I really think he's going to have some fantasy impact, even if it is only through the first, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks. But who's to say, if he comes out and he's really, burning the barn doors off, even when Mendenhall gets healthy, you could still see Isaac Redmond in there getting some carries and maybe at least some of the goal line work. Like I wouldn't, discount him. If he can really shine in those first few weeks, he may add fantasy value to your team throughout the whole year. So I think it's going to be, I'm really excited, and I'm really excited. I can't wait for Steeler football to start. And living here in South Jersey, I can't wait for the first preseason game, and I hope that we can beat up on the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit. So it's going to be great.
So what's the timeline on Mike Wallace, do you think?
Well, here's another one, and there's so much. We have a lot of young, great, talented receivers, and there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the squad as a whole. But Mike Wallace, I'm hoping that he's going to be back early. I'm hoping that he'll be able to come back for the start of the season, but I don't know if there's anything definitive on him yet. Okay.
Well, I think we hit the passing game, the running game, that offensive line. I think the line is starting to degrade a little bit. They used to be one of the premier offensive lines in the NFL, but
sure,
they're still a great run blocking line. And of course, you can't say enough about the Steelers' defense.
Well, that takes care of itself. I mean, the defense that they've built, the scheme that they've had, the way that they've been running that for decades, and that's just another one of those teams that you don't even have to think about it. You know that if you come into Steelers country, you're going to get hit in the mouth. They're going to come into your house, they're going to hit you in the mouth, and it's an attitude. It's more than just about playing great defense. It's you have to. You're wearing that Steelers symbol on the side of your helmet, and you've earned that. They do a great job drafting every year. We lose key components to that defense every year. Their linebackers are some of the most sought-after players in the league. When, we think they've lost a half a step and we're looking to get rid of them, the other teams flock to grab these guys. And year after year, they replace them with somebody else. It'll start the season as, who's that guy? And by the end of the year, everybody's wishing it was the guy on their team. And that's what they do.
All right. Okay. Well, that is about as in-depth as you'll get on the Steelers on Fantasy Football Radio this preseason. Dr. Don, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm going to talk about the Denver Broncos this year. Last year we know what they did last year, and now when you add an element add a guy like Peyton Manning to that mix, I think they could be pretty dangerous this year. When Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas had pretty decent years last year, especially for a stretch of a couple weeks, Demaryius Thomas was on fire. I think when you throw a quarterback like Peyton Manning in there, I think those guys, from a fantasy standpoint, could have a big year. I mean, Eric Decker had 8 touchdowns last year. And considering the quarterbacks he had, that's pretty good. When you put a guy like Peyton Manning in there, it could happen. Willis McGahee at running back, Moshe Moreno, if he could ever stay healthy, former first-round pick of them. If he can stay healthy, it adds a running game to Peyton Manning's offense. And even when he was in Indianapolis, he never really had a run game some years, and he would still make it happen. I'm excited to watch them guys this year. We know from last year that it's a good defense. Von Miller, Champ Bailey. They added a couple other guys in the secondary this year. Drayton Florence, Tracy Porter. I like them. I'm not a Broncos fan, by the way, but I like them this year, especially in that weak AFC West. I don't know what the Chargers are going to do this year, but I think Broncos are going to be good this year. From a fantasy standpoint, I wouldn't mind having a few of those guys on my team. And from just a football standpoint, I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this year in AFC.
Well, I got one thing to point out, and I'm going to throw it back to you for your opinion. At the point where Kyle Orton handed over the starting quarterback job to Tim Tebow, Eric Decker was the number 7 wide receiver in the NFL for fantasy point scores.
Yeah.
Do you think that flicks over to the Peyton Manning era?
Oh yeah, I definitely think it does.
He's got a chance to be a top 10 guy.
I don't know about top 10. I mean, think about the guys. I mean, talking about adapting. If you want to talk about adapting to how the league changes fantasy-wise, 10 years ago we were drafting 2 running backs. Now I feel like it's more of a wide receiver league. I don't think you can put him in the top 10 just because. Think about the guys that are in the top 10. Calvin Johnson. I mean, Victor Cruz was on fire last year. There's a couple different guys. So I don't think top 10, but I think Decker, and I really like Thomas. 6'3", 230, fast as another Georgia Tech guy that didn't really get a chance to shine in college. But yeah, I think that like I said, not top 10, but I think top 15, top 20. I wouldn't mind having those guys start for me every week.
Okay, solid year, and that's another AFC defense that really was unheralded in the preseason and ended up just stomping all over people as the season wore on. So Denver Broncos certainly could be a team to reckon with. So you think they'll take the AFC West?
I think so. I mean, depending on is Jamal Charles healthy this year? You got to look at that. Who knows what the Chargers are going to do? They'll be Super Bowl contenders every year until they start playing. And
they've got a 2-word problem in San Diego. Norv Turner.
Yeah, I know. I know. So I mean, it's a weak conference, so they could come out of it on top.
And one side note on that, and we all know this. If Peyton Manning truly is back 100%, hell, if Peyton Manning's at 90%. Like, oh my God! We've all seen the guy. He's a technician on the field. He does have some decent weapons around him. He's got receivers who are known to be decent playmakers. I mean, they could run away with the West. I mean, they really could. But I mean, I think a lot of it is all going to depend on Peyton Manning and how back is he really? The 2 guys that you mentioned last year with Kyle Orton and Tim Tebow, I mean, they didn't even have a quarterback last year. And as you pointed out, they had a top 10, receiver as far as fantasy points. So, yeah, with a Manning in there, I agree. I think it's a really interesting team that you picked. Of course, I picked the Steelers because I'm a fan. I think you picked a little bit more interesting topic, and it appeals to the masses because of Peyton Manning. But absolutely, I mean, if this man is back, and he's truly back, I mean, we all know what he's capable of doing, and I don't know, I mean, a Super Bowl ring might not even be out of the question.
Now, that'd be one heck of a feat. Leading 2 different teams to Super Bowl championships certainly would put Peyton Manning in the rarefied air and enforce his already impressive resume to the Hall of Fame. So,
sure.
Yeah, that would be huge. Well, you know what? We are just short of 10 minutes before 10 o'clock. It is time for another break. We will be back just in a moment with Kick-Ass Fantasy Football here on Blog Talk Radio with Dr. Don McCardell and JB, the Fantasy Phenom Parker.
Fantasy football owners, the Kick-Ass Fantasy Football Show is back every Sunday this season with everything you need to cruise into a championship. Join me, the professor,
and me, the commish, along with fantasy insider Matt Lowry. Get all your fantasy football news as we break down all the players and tell you who to start and who to trade while we take your calls all show long.
We'll see you every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. all season long here on 97.3 ESPN. Check us out on the web at kickassfantasyfootball.com. Fantasy football owners, it's draft time, and kickassfantasyfootball.com makes it easy.
How do we make it easy?
Projections from the experts, cheat sheets with your scoring rules.
What else?
Articles all season long, waiver wire picks, trade advice, everything you need to win a championship.
How about a free judgment from fantasyjudgment.com, a $15 value?
Now we're talking.
Subscribe today for just $9.95. We'll throw in a complimentary cruise for 2 to the Bahamas.
cruise to a championship with kickassfantasyfootball.com.
Well, we are flying through our first show back from the off season here at Kick-Ass Fantasy Football here on Blog Talk Radio. It has been a long 8 months. Dr. Don, JB, chomping at the bit to talk fantasy football all off season long, and here we are here on the radio. They are available on the internet at kickassfantasyfootball.com. They will be at Fantasy Football Fest in Atlantic City on August 17th, 18th, and 19th. We are everywhere. We are a multi-media phenomenon here at Kick-Ass Fantasy Football. So we heard about Dr. Don's pick for the AFC West. He's got the Denver Broncos taking it. That's a great segue into our final segment. Who's going to take each division? Since we are in the AFC West, JB, you going to go with Dr. Don, or are you going to register a different guess?
Well, I'm going to hope that Peyton Manning is back, and as I stated before the commercial break, if he's back, I don't think anybody can beat them. The only other team that I would look at there would be, the San Diego Chargers. They've been perennial good, but they're also perennial upset. Their fans are, they've got to be in shambles now. Every year they've got all these high expectations, and they always find a way to fall apart. But I'm going to hope that Peyton Manning is alive, well, healthy, and back, and I say Denver takes the division.
Okay, 2 for the Broncos. Let's flip over to the NFC West, where the San Francisco 49ers ran away with it in 2011. Let's start with you, JB.
Well, there's a lot of interesting things there. I mean, Seattle, they're a young building team. They're trying to add to their repertoire. They just picked up Braylon Edwards this week, and they seem to be very focused and a very driven team. I mean, this division as a whole is great because you know what, they all wallow in mediocrity, and it makes it such an interesting division. Seattle, the St. Louis Rams, another team, a lot of talent at wide receiver, a decent young quarterback in Bradford. You got a perennial running back stud in St. Louis. There's just, wow. I mean, it's literally, if there was a 4-sided coin, I would flip it, and I would tell you who was going to win that division. Just out of pure gut, and I'm going to say the San Francisco 49ers. I think that they're very well coached. I think that as far as all 4 teams, they're probably the most well-rounded. They've got a solid defense. They've got some decent receivers. They got a great, running back in Frank Gore. And I just think that, the cream will rise to the top, and I would have to go with the 49ers.
We are 2 for 2, guys. We're gonna blitz through the last 6 divisions, and we can go into it a little bit more in later episodes, but let's move to the South. Let's say NFC South first. Big blow to the Saints in the off season. So who picks up the pieces?
I think the Saints might probably get in as a wild card just on talent alone. I don't know. I'm curious to see. Nothing like this has ever really happened before, where a coach had to sit out a year and miss your middle linebacker Vilma. So I think they might sneak in as a wild card, but I think the Panthers, not the Panthers, what am I talking about? Not yet, maybe next year. But I think the Falcons, with that running game, I like Matt Ryan, another year under Julio Jones' belt. I like them to win the division, just maybe just for this year, because the Saints will be back next year. But I like the Falcons this year. More steady team, good running game. A lot of people don't like Matt Ryan. I do, and I really like Julio Jones and Roddy White.
Okay, well, I like that Falcons pick. Go ahead.
I'm going with my dark horse there. I touched on him a little bit earlier with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I said, I think the comeback player of the year could be a Josh Freeman. A good team with a very solid defense. I think Freeman's got all the talent in the world. I just didn't think he had a chance to really showcase it last year. We saw glimpses of it 2 years ago. He adds Vincent Jackson to his, somebody to target out there, and I think they can really come out and surprise a lot of people this year. I say Tampa Bay Buccaneers take that division.
You'd have Greg Schiano would be Coach of the Year if he turns that team into a division winner. That's a great pick. Very, very gutsy call there. So let's go to the AFC South. Here's a team with a division with a couple teams in rebuilding mode. JB, start us off here.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of rebuilding going on down there. With the Tennessee Titans, they were on a quarterback carousel there for a little while, and they've got some problems with their receivers on and off the field. Kenny Britt and the likes. We touched on that a little bit, and the Colts, they lost the face of their franchise, and now they've got a young kid and Andrew Luck coming in to take the reins, and it's such a hard league to come in and to shine, and especially at that position. I mean, you look at the Mannings of the world, and you look, very few quarterbacks come in as a rookie and really make a statement. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, of course, I have to throw homage to my Steelers, but, it's a very rare position to come in and actually shine. So what I'm going to have to go with in that division is the team that seems to still be the most put together, and they were on the rise last year, and they impressed a lot of people, and that's the Houston Texans. And I really think that they've got they got a lot of the same people returning. They've got probably the best running back statistically in the league today. Adrian Peterson, he might not even get a full 16 games out of him this year. As one of the other top running backs, but different league, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. But, the Texans.
But the Houston Texans, I think they're going to shine.
Okay, Dr. Don, you going to dissent, or you going to go along with the Texans on this one?
Nah, I got to go along with the Texans. I mean, the other teams are just too broken up and too young. And look at the Colts. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do anything this year, but like you said, Texans are still well put together. Andre Johnson, Aaron Foster, good defense. Matt Schaub is a stud. Texans winning that division.
Okay, because JB ran long on that one. I'm going to save the AFC North for last. So let's go AFC East on this one, and Dr. Don, read us in on this one. This should be a foregone conclusion. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, Jets are a mess. I got to go to Patriots all the way. I think they're just going to beat up on this division. Not really. So Bills are. Who knows what's going on in Miami? Buffalo, good upstart team. 7 wins, but I think the Patriots win 12, 13 games this year, and the Jets just. Every time I turn on the news, somebody's saying something dumb on that team or something's happening.
They're entertaining, if nothing else. They may not be winning playoff games, but they're entertaining. Yeah. JB, what do you got?
Yeah, there's nothing even to talk about in that division. I'm convinced at this point that, I mean, in the off season, if anybody paid attention, even with the Hernandez, with what they have at tight end is amazing, and they brought in 10 tight ends to look at this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they just don't line up on the field with Tom Brady and 10 more tight ends, and they'll just let them block, they'll let them catch, they'll let them run. They're just going to let them do anything, and they would still win the freaking division. So
they'll run the A11 offense. I love it.
You got it.
Okay, let's jump over to the NFC East. This one's always a dogfight, but we gotta blitz through it, fellas. So let's just go right to the winner. Don.
I'm going to say the Eagles. I'm going to say the Eagles. Take Dallas Cowboys are a mess. Take note, the Giants. Real quick, the Giants always have a good year and then an off year. A good year and an off year. If you watch the trend in the past 5 or 6 years, it's been back and forth. Win the Super Bowl. 2008, they stunk. They won the Super Bowl last year. Let's see what they do this year. I have to say the Eagles win 10, 11 games this year, win the division.
New York Giants.
No, New York Giants.
Sweet and compact New York Giants.
Okay. Okay, how about a team with a division with a couple up-and-coming teams and Super Bowl champs, the NFC North. No, not the Super Bowl champs, the top winning team last year. Sorry, the Super Bowl champs for the Giants. We just went off of the Giants. My bad. So Bears and Lions, up-and-coming teams, or the Packers?
I got to say the Packers.
Or you want to go to the Vikings, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Because Ponder's going to just come back and wow us all. No, that ain't going to happen. Packers win that division.
Yep.
Packers. Okay, Don?
I have to say Packers too. Maybe Bears getting a wild card, but I like the line. That's going to be tough this year. It could go either way. I mean, Detroit looked really good last year, but I just got to go with the Packers.
Okay. Okay, and then, like I said, we were going to save them for last. The AFC North, I think this is another foregone conclusion. My Baltimore Ravens walked away with this one, right?
Ain't none of them going to be walking after they visit Heinz Field.
They win there last year. Let's get them down for the record, gentlemen. We're going to come back and look at this at about mid-season. JB, I know you're going Steelers, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and Dr. Don?
I got to go Steelers too. I mean, Ravens getting as a wild card. It's going to be tough. It's going to go either way. It's going to come down to those two games those teams play each other. I'll say Steelers though.
Okay, well, gentlemen, you know what time it is? It is 10 o'clock p.m. We hit this baby on the nose. This has been a great show, fastest 60 minutes I've had in the last 8 months. I've really enjoyed it. It was fun coming in and playing guest host with you guys. JB, any parting words for our Blog Talk fans out there?
Drive fast.
Dr. Don, anything safer to say?
No. I can't. Not after that.
Okay, guys, it has been a great show. It was a blast, and looking forward to a great draft. We'll see you all at the Fantasy Football Fest live in Atlantic City the weekend of August 18th and 19th. The Kick-Ass Fantasy Football teams will be kicking off their season with a draft at the show, and listen to us every Sunday morning on ESPN 97.3 in South Jersey and on the Radio Pup ad on the internet and on your mobile devices. So Radio Pup app on Apple and the Amazon store, and you can listen to us live in South Jersey. So, gentlemen, great show. Looking forward to a great season.
Sounds good.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.